Ralph, thanks for coming back, because when we had this discussion, we felt we had not touched on other key aspects that needed to be looked at. And one of them was the whole issue of what type of entrepreneurial person we find in Africa. Is it the same as other parts of the world?
Thanks for having me over, Godfrey. Indeed, when we last spoke about this, there were other factors that contribute towards the growth and even emergence of entrepreneurship that we did not touch upon. And as you say, quite key is for us to understand exactly what are the strain of entrepreneurship that you find across Africa, as in also what you find in emerging markets, because it's different from what you find in developing nations. So in a sense, in Africa, you have a high concentration of lower-level informal sector type of entrepreneurs, which follows the structures of economies within Africa.
Why is that?
It has to do with the opportunities that are created by the economy. It has to do with some of the trends within the economy. To what extent is the tertiary sector of the economy or the secondary, the informal economy developed? Because if you look at developed nations with very high sophisticated economies, growth yielding economies, you find a different type of entrepreneurship. You can say it evolves from what you can say we have across Africa towards high-end, technology-intensive and even capital-intensive type of entrepreneurship.
Okay, so before we make the comparison against the developed world, let's make the comparison against other developing nations, your Brazils, your Indias, etc. How is that? How do we fare?
South Africa is quite a complex or an interesting case because it has both strands of entrepreneurship.
Okay.
South Africa,
define those first, and then we can talk about what how different they are from the other guys.
The first strands that you have in South Africa is your high-end, your capital-intensive type of entrepreneurship. Okay. And also, on the other hand, you have opportunities for lower-level street traders, some kind of informal type of entrepreneurship within one country. But in most of emerging markets, like your Brazil, your India, you find rather concentration of informal type of entrepreneurship, informal sector-based entrepreneurship. However, in Africa, across African countries, across East Africa, you look at Kenya, you look at West Africa, Nigeria, you look at Senegal, you find high concentration of informal traders that define entrepreneurship in those areas.
So what are you saying? Are you saying we're doomed to produce small-type business people who struggle from day to day and generally are entrepreneurs because they've been forced by circumstance to be one?
Well, they are supposed to evolve. What happens is that you look at the type of the structure of our economy, the macroeconomic structure that we have, you produce those informal type of entrepreneurs, but they are supposed to be sustained and they're supposed to evolve into formal type or semi-formal type of entrepreneurs where they are no longer perpetually held at an entry level, and they become somehow, not totally, but somehow part of the formal economy. However, you can say that this evolution is not always linear. In South Africa, you have those entry rate, but you have quite a high exit rate of entrepreneurs. It's stated that 70% of those who emerge at the lower level, they do not survive beyond 2 to 3 years.
Fikas, what is the problem here? Is it a question of regulation? Is it a question of a state that's also confused between its own role in the economy and actually its main responsibility and primary responsibility of creating an environment that enables your entrepreneur to grow?
I think that the main reason why entrepreneurs hasn't actually been produced in great numbers in kind of, let's say, middle class type of entrepreneurs, the kind of equivalent of the German Mittelstand, if you like, would be that really the environment in Africa in terms of government, in terms of economic growth, in terms of infrastructure, etc., has not been conducive. So my view is that the biggest problem in Africa has been bad government, and we need to fix bad government before we can actually see these entrepreneurs flourishing. But I think there is a second issue which is maybe more of a worrying issue, which is African culture conducive to entrepreneurship? And to some extent, I think that you may say that the Ubuntu culture of allowing other people to also flourish and kind of being a little bit laid back and not sharp-edged may not be conducive to entrepreneurship, because being sharp traders might have been a better idea. I don't know what he...
Yes,
exactly.
that's a cogent observation there. You have a varying degree of cultural, you can say, different levels at which you can say a country has got a favorable culture to that. But the fact, I think, or I would say, let me not call it a fact, let me say that you can tinker with culture. You can somehow start by coming up with government programs that adjust or maybe try to rearrange the culture and arrive at a culture that brings about entrepreneurship. And it's right to say that Africa has got that problem. And you have as well the question of government as well. But in the case of South Africa, you have a government that has got capacity to do well in terms of bringing about entrepreneurship.
I want to come back to culture. I want to come back to culture, because I want to use a word here that may not be popular. But is it a question of us as black people not being ruthless enough and not thinking first about me?
To some extent it is, but also...
Is that a fault?
It's not a fault. It's something that can be overcome, in a sense of not thinking of. It's something that can be overcome. I believe that the state, I believe that government can invest in the rhetoric of thinking about yourself, doing it for yourself.
The individual.
And doing it for your own country. Those are some of the strains that can be changed through a well-focused government policy in that sense.
To what extent has the fact that we've had governments that have come into power after colonialism, and with these governments, when they come in with these well-meaning programs about looking after our people, and when you use terms like those, people sort of relax because the government will do it.
Yes, that's true. I mean, I think to me, this is one of the drawbacks of South African government's intervention on entrepreneurship now as we speak, because I believe that somehow you have to nurture the idea of an individual struggling for themselves in a way that if they start engaging in entrepreneurial activities, they will develop some level of resilience to strive through and believe that they will achieve that kind of they will achieve in that activity.
Yeah. Last week we had a discussion around the effect that BEE has on entrepreneurs. Is it possible to create any kind of entrepreneur at all around out of BEE? The guys that we are inviting and giving shares to, and therefore instantly making them business people, and sometimes in some cases instant millionaires that they've never sweated for in their lives.
I think it's very important that we distinguish between transfer of assets and ownership. And
those are not entrepreneurs.
Yes, we tell that we need to begin to start telling that from encouraging engagement in economic activities. There is a simple economic maxim that says if I give you 100 rands, I'm not helping the economy. But if I give you an opportunity to use that amount of money in order to generate further wealth and engage in other activities, I am in that sense helping the economy. So what I'm saying is that at an upper level of the economy, you can say the main target of BEE does not really speak to your entrepreneur in the sense that we are speaking about. It does not really help very, very much in terms of assisting in people engaging in those activities.
Because how can we use BEE to encourage entrepreneurship and grow and develop entrepreneurship?
I think one of the very positive aspects of BEE has been the pressure on bigger companies to use small suppliers, because a very large portion of entrepreneurs worldwide are actually suppliers to large companies. So if you go to Germany, go to Japan, go to China, you see a lot of small companies that actually deliver products to large companies who then export or do the things that you need scale for. So I think one of the very positive aspects of BEE has been to force companies to actually support these entrepreneurs.